I want your take on what's happening in China as well. Why do you believe that Chinese demand seems to have decoupled from the macro? Demand is strong. The economic outlook broadly, though, is weak. What's going on?
Yeah, great question. I was in Beijing last week, and we are about to put out a note on the China decoupling, so you get a preview of that today, in fact. And it's a conundrum, right? It's a conundrum for even Chinese companies. But I think one of the things we've been seeing in the market, or particularly in China, the government has tried to make the economy, the GDP, more focused on consumers and pivoting more towards consumer-led, which is more sustainable rather than, just simply pushing more and more stimulus. And we are seeing that in the numbers. We are seeing far stronger gasoline and jet demand. But for me, the biggest takeaway from China last week was the fact that diesel demand, which about 40% of diesel demand in China used to be the transportation sector, now, because of the logistics boom, it's 70%. So you can see why it has decoupled. It goes back a bit to COVID. Remember when April 2020, all of us were at home and nobody was flying or driving, but we still managed to consume 80 million barrels per day of oil globally. It is a bit like that. I think oil demand is very, very inelastic when it is dependent on consumers, and I think China is pivoting more towards that.
Okay, so what's the outlook for demand globally towards year end and into 2024?
Look, we started the year saying we were conservative, that demand growth will be 1.3 million barrels per day. The reality today is 2 million barrels per day of demand growth is what we are looking at this year. So upside surprises have actually come from the US and Europe, which are meant to be in recessions of some sort, right? We are expecting demand growth to slow next year to 1.2 million barrels per day year on year, mainly because, again, that big upswing from China post-COVID is not going to be there. But if you ask me where the risks are to that number, it is still to the upside, even with us assuming a mild recession in the US, because jet demand is still a good million barrels per day lower than 2019, and it will take through 2024 to recover fully.